A neonatal unit, incubators, premature babies fighting for their lives, and a nurse, Lucy Letby, described by colleagues as devoted, caring, an angel. Between June 2015 and June 2016 at the Countess of Chester Hospital in England, a series of unexplained deaths and sudden collapses of newborns plunged the hospital into horror. The common denominator? Lucy Letby was on duty every single time. How could a young woman with a gentle smile, whose job was to save lives, take so many? This is the story of one of the most improbable and monstrous serial killers in British history. A true vocation, it seemed. She grew up in a quiet cul-de-sac, the first in her family to attend university. Her parents described her as a normal girl who loved her job. She pursued her nursing degree at the University of Chester, completing placements at both Liverpool Women's Hospital and the Countess of Chester Hospital during her 3 years of training. In September 2011, she graduated and began working as a qualified nurse in the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital. From 2011 until early 2015, the death rates in her ward were statistically comparable to other hospitals, but that was about to change dramatically. Letby was known among colleagues as competent, conscientious, and particularly dedicated to the most fragile babies. She worked long hours, sometimes double shifts. What emerged from the investigation was a modus operandi of clinical coldness, of terrifying precision. Lucy Letby didn't use conventional weapons. Her arsenal was the very equipment designed to save lives, weaponized with a horrifying knowledge of neonatal physiology. First method, air injection. Picture a syringe filled not with medicine but with air. Injected into the intravenous line of a premature baby, this air travels as bubbles to the heart or brain, causing a fatal air embolism. Within seconds, a stable infant collapses. The evil genius. At autopsy, the air disappears. It leaves almost no trace except the mystery of an unexplained cardiac arrest. Second method, insulin poisoning. Letby injected insulin directly into bags of intravenous nutrition. For a newborn, especially a premature one, this is a death sentence. Insulin crashes blood sugar to levels incompatible with life. Fulminant hypoglycemia, coma, brain death. Again, the evidence is fleeting. Insulin degrades quickly in the blood. Without extremely rapid and targeted testing, the chemical proof evaporates. Recent expert analysis has raised serious questions about the insulin evidence. The Roche immunoassay test used was known to produce falsely elevated insulin results. The Royal Liverpool Hospital's own guidelines explicitly warn that these tests are not suitable for investigating hypoglycemia caused by insulin injection. Third method, air forced down nasogastric tubes into the stomach. Fourth method, overfeeding with milk via feeding tubes, literally flooding the lungs until respiratory failure. Fifth method, physical obstruction, a hand over the mouth and nose of an infant too weak to fight back. Prosecutors argued that some victims survived multiple attacks before finally dying. One surviving victim's parents claimed their child suffered irreversible brain damage and quadriplegic cerebral palsy from being given excess milk and air. But what truly chills the blood isn't just the method, it's the ritual. Letby didn't kill furtively in the shadows and flee. She killed, then stayed. She became the lead actress in the drama she had just triggered. Often, she committed her acts in the very presence of parents. While they turned away, chatting among themselves or looking out the window, the air syringe was injected. Minutes later, it was she who sounded the alarm. "Come quickly! Your baby is deteriorating." In one shocking instance, Dr. Ravi Jayaram testified that he walked into the unit to find Letby standing over an infant whose breathing tube had been dislodged. The monitors showed the baby's oxygen levels dangerously dropping, and Letby was doing nothing to help, just standing there, watching. Dr. Jayaram stepped in, but the infant allegedly died 3 days later. She then attended the desperate resuscitation attempts. Standing back, she observed the chaos, doctors fighting, alarms screaming, parents weeping. According to some testimonies, there was something in her gaze, not horror, a form of fascination. And after death, her ritual continued on social media. She searched for grieving families on Facebook, looked at their photos, read their grief-filled statuses. Sometimes she even sent them condolence messages. "I'm thinking of you so much," she wrote to parents whose child she had just killed. At her home, investigators found morbid souvenirs, scribbled notes on hospital letterhead. "I am evil. I killed them on purpose," alongside phrases like despair, hate my life, and why me. She kept photos of condolence cards received from colleagues. She kept everything, like trophies, like tangible proof of the absolute power she wielded over the most fragile line of all, between life and death. It was ultimately the cold logic of numbers that began to betray her. In mid-2015, certain doctors, led by consultant pediatrician Dr. Stephen Breary, noticed a pattern impossible to ignore. They started marking on a calendar, an unexplained death. Check the duty roster. Lucy Letby was there. A sudden collapse. Check the schedule. Lucy Letby was on shift. A third, a fourth catastrophe. Every time, her name appeared. Between June 2015 and June 2016, there was a significant rise in deaths and serious catastrophic collapses among babies in their ward. Consultants later concluded these deaths were not medically explicable and were the result of the actions of Lucy Letby. Statistics spoke a brutal language. The probability that the same nurse would be present by chance at every single catastrophe was astronomically low, infinitesimally close to zero. Yet faced with the unthinkable, the hospital wavered. How could they suspect such a dedicated colleague, the one who stayed after her shift to comfort parents, the one they called the Golden Nurse? A secret meeting was organized. The most concerned doctors gathered, without Lucy Letby. They lined up medical files. They compared collapse times with shift schedules. The pattern was now a mathematical certainty, but it was a certainty so monstrous it paralyzed them. What to do? Accuse a colleague of serial murder without direct physical evidence? Meanwhile, 3 senior managers from the Countess of Chester Hospital were arrested in June 2025 on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter for their failure to act on concerns raised about Letby years earlier. Letby was arrested 3 times, first in July 2018, again in June 2019, and finally in November 2020. The Netflix documentary released in February 2026 shows never-before-seen footage of her final arrest. Police enter her bedroom. She sits up in bed in her pajamas looking confused, as officers tell her she's being arrested for murder. She's taken away in her dressing gown. The next day, she was charged with murder and attempted murder. This time she was denied bail and remained in police custody. Detectives expanded their investigation to cover the full period Letby worked as a nurse, from 2012 to 2016, reviewing 4,000 baby admissions. They're now also examining deaths and collapses at Liverpool Women's Hospital, where she did placements. Her story is a dark reminder that the most absolute evil can sometimes wear a nurse's uniform and an angel's smile. She became the most prolific child serial killer in modern British history. Sentencing her, Judge Mr. Justice Goss described the cruelty and calculation of her actions as truly horrific. He told her, "You acted in a way that was completely contrary to the normal human instincts of nurturing and caring for babies, and in gross breach of the trust that all citizens place in those who work in the medical and caring professions. There was a malevolence bordering on sadism in your actions. She received 15 whole-life orders, meaning she will never be released. Only the 4th woman in British history to receive such a sentence. But the case refuses to close. In February 2025, an international panel of 14 neonatology experts, led by Canadian Dr. Shu Lee, concluded that there was no murder, that babies died of natural causes or poor medical care. Her case is now under review by the Criminal Cases Review Commission.